Took Sean Diddy Combs into custody. He's seen in this video entering the Park Hyatt Hotel in Midtown Manhattan with others when agents from Homeland Security Investigations approach and separate him. They place Combs under arrest and lead him out the front door in handcuffs.
Yesterday, all over our social media pages, Cassie filed a lawsuit in New York City against Diddy.
Yikes.
She's claiming she was stuck in a decade-long cycle of abuse.
When the news broke that Steve Harvey had started cooperating with the FBI following Diddy's shocking arrest, the celebrity world was thrown into chaos. The revelation was jaw-dropping. Steve Harvey, the king of daytime television, famous game shows, and self-help books, had quietly been entangled in something much darker for years. It turns out that Steve might not have been just an innocent bystander or victim of Diddy's manipulations. He had become deeply involved in a web of deceit, and it all began at one of Diddy's infamous parties.
And Stacey, you say today's indictment reads like a mob indictment. What was most shocking to you of all these allegations?
Yeah, the fact, Jake, that the government in this indictment presented evidence alleging that Sean Combs was running a criminal enterprise.
Now, let's be honest. Rumors have swirled for years about Diddy's private gatherings. They were notorious, filled with big-name celebrities and shrouded in secrecy. People whispered about the outrageous happenings behind closed doors, but no one really knew what went on until now. And here's the kicker. Steve Harvey was a regular attendee. Yes, the man who preaches about faith, family, and doing the right thing was knee-deep in Diddy's wild lifestyle. So what happened at these parties that would make a man like Steve risk everything to keep it quiet?
Well, if he really was filming everybody, I mean, he had a lot of people at those parties, right?
The answer lies in the fact that Diddy was no ordinary host. According to insiders, he wasn't just throwing lavish parties for fun. He was collecting dirt on his so-called friends. At one particular event, Diddy allegedly caught Steve on camera in a compromising position. We're talking about secret cameras hidden everywhere, recording every move.
With very, very serious and salacious allegations, including allegations that Combs had cameras throughout his home.
These weren't just casual social gatherings. These parties were elaborate traps. And Steve, who had attended more than one, found himself on the wrong end of Diddy's lens. What exactly did Diddy capture? Well, the details are fuzzy, but the word is that it was something scandalous enough to keep Steve in line for years. For those who don't know, Diddy has always had an eye for power. He knew that having leverage over powerful people was the ultimate insurance policy. So when he realized what he had on Steve, he didn't hesitate to use it.
And in this lawsuit, he claims that essentially P. Diddy was the Epstein of the rap industry.
Reports have surfaced that Diddy blackmailed Steve for years, demanding favors and even a stake in some of Steve's lucrative business ventures. But here's where it gets even wilder. Diddy allegedly didn't stop at business deals. According to whispers making their way through Hollywood, Diddy demanded something even more unthinkable: Lori Harvey. That's right, Steve's own stepdaughter was supposedly part of the twisted equation.
Every aspect of her life. He is accused of frequently beating her and would hide her in hotel rooms for days until the bruising and signs of abuse were gone.
It sounds unbelievable, but when you start to piece together the facts, it all fits. Lori, who was in her early 20s at the time, became a fixture at celebrity events around the same time Diddy and Steve were reportedly locking horns behind the scenes. There were even rumors that Lori had been involved with Diddy romantically, rumors that both Lori and Diddy have denied, but they persist nonetheless. In any case, Diddy's hold over Steve wasn't just about money, it was personal. Diddy knew he had Steve right where he wanted him, and Steve wasn't in any position to refuse.
That clearly there is a criminal investigation underway, and that they believe that there would be evidence of crimes in one or both of these homes.
But why didn't Steve walk away? Why didn't he go public sooner? The answer might lie in how deep Diddy's influence went. If Steve had come forward, he would have had to face the fallout from the footage, whatever it was. And for someone like Steve, whose image is everything, the potential destruction of his brand was too great a risk. Steve built an empire around being the charming, wise, funny man everyone could relate to, but behind that shiny exterior was someone who was terrified of losing it all.
You know, I think in federal court and for these charges, they would say it's routine, but in the public realm, this is very significant, just from who we associate Diddy being and everything we've seen him do over the decades. Like you said, this is quite the downfall to go from, I mean, we saw the mansions back in March that were raided by the feds. So to go from living in those mansions to being in a jail cell.
The layers of manipulation go even deeper when you look at what Steve allegedly had to do for Diddy over the years. Beyond the rumors of Lori's involvement, sources claim that Diddy used Steve's influence to solve legal issues, make connections, and even launder money through his businesses. It's hard to imagine someone like Steve, who is always preaching about the importance of ethics and values, being caught up in something so sinister. But the whispers have been growing louder. Steve wasn't just Diddy's friend, he was his pawn. He was the person Diddy would call when a problem needed solving, someone to clean up the mess without asking too many questions.
And a lot of the evidence, alleged evidence, that's been gathered in this case was from those 2 raids that were conducted on his personal homes in Miami and Los Angeles. And the indictment names the things seized that he allegedly made videos of these performances that have been named freak-offs.
And here's the twist that really makes this story explode. Steve didn't just stay silent because of blackmail. There are rumors that Steve benefited from the arrangement. Some say he used Diddy's connections to secure key business deals.
And I hung the phone up. I went upstairs. I said, Marjorie down. I said, Marjorie, we got a problem. When I explained it to her, Marjorie started crying.
Others claim that Steve enjoyed the perks of being in Diddy's inner circle, luxury trips, access to the most exclusive events, and more. It's possible that Steve was reluctant to walk away from the perks that came with being close to Diddy. But as time went on, the price of staying in Diddy's orbit became too high.
Special housing unit is a 24-hour lockdown unit, which means that any movement within that unit is controlled and coordinated, and no inmate moves outside of his cell without being in full restraints, to include leg irons, handcuffs, a belly chain, and at least 2, if not 3 staff members escorting them.
It wasn't until Diddy's recent legal troubles that Steve finally saw a way out. When the FBI began investigating Diddy for a laundry list of charges, including racketeering and corruption, Steve knew the game was up. He had 2 choices, either go down with Diddy or flip and cooperate with the feds. It's no surprise that Steve chose the latter. For someone who has always had a sharp sense for survival, this was the only move that made sense. By cooperating, Steve could protect himself from any legal fallout and try to salvage what was left of his reputation. But in doing so, he exposed just how far he had fallen from the image of the wholesome, family-friendly entertainer.
Now, if the government is going to mandate that they are responsible for your well-being, they have to ensure the safety of your well-being.
In one of the most shocking revelations, it was reported that Steve approached the FBI not long after Diddy's arrest. According to insiders, Steve painted himself as the victim, claiming that Diddy had coerced him into doing things he never wanted to do. He played the part of someone who had been backed into a corner, manipulated by one of the most powerful men in the entertainment industry. But let's be real here. Was Steve really just a victim? Or was he playing both sides all along? His decision to cooperate certainly raises questions about his role in all of this.
Got the Diddy situation where he jumps on a private jet, they say yesterday, and is on his way to the Cape Verde Islands.
On the surface, it might seem like Steve had no choice. With Diddy behind bars and the full force of the law closing in, anyone in Steve's position would have been looking for an escape route. But the truth is, Steve had been complicit for years. He knew exactly what Diddy was up to, and he chose to stay silent. Whether it was because of blackmail or because he benefited from the arrangement, the fact remains, Steve was part of the problem. And now, with Diddy's arrest and all the skeletons coming out of the closet, Steve is scrambling to distance himself. What's most disturbing is how seamlessly Steve has maintained his public persona throughout all of this. He continued to host his talk shows, write self-help books, and mentor young people, all while hiding his involvement with Diddy's questionable activities. It's a classic case of someone presenting one face to the world while hiding another entirely. And now that the truth is starting to emerge, it's clear that Steve's carefully crafted image is beginning to crack.
That's not the issue. The issue is, it seems as though he wants to kind of like exert power and dominance over people who don't really want it.
But even as Steve tries to navigate this mess, the real question is, what happens next? Will the public forgive him once more details come to light? Or will this be the scandal that finally brings down his empire? It's hard to say, but one thing is for sure, this story is far from over. The deeper you dig, the more layers of deceit, manipulation, and betrayal you uncover.
Now, so what is next? Is he going to be in jail in this facility until the trial begins? Is there a chance he could, get moved earlier than that?
As of this moment, as of this hour, as of today, yes. But of course, as I mentioned earlier, they're going to be appealing this thing next to the Second U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals to overturn the judge's order here to try and get him actually released.
And while Steve is busy trying to salvage his reputation, Diddy's situation is only getting worse. With the official charges against him piling up, Diddy is facing a long legal battle that could result in significant time behind bars. The allegations include not only the accusations of corruption and conspiracy, but also new claims that are only now starting to surface. It's a mess, and everyone connected to Diddy, especially Steve, seems to be caught in the fallout.
So I don't give them no energy. I give haters no energy. Steve ain't this, he think he this. You don't even know me.
Now, let's not get it twisted. Steve Harvey might be painting himself as a victim in this whole Diddy mess, but if you take a closer look, it's clear that Steve is far from innocent. Sure, he claims that Diddy blackmailed him and pushed him into a corner, but let's be real. Steve has his own dark history, and it's not as squeaky clean as his public persona would have you believe. In fact, some would argue that Steve has been playing the game all along, just like Diddy, and this whole situation is simply a house of cards crumbling down. Let's start with Steve's past. On the surface, he's built a brand around family values, preaching loyalty, hard work, and moral principles. But behind that motivational speaker image, Steve's life has been riddled with scandal. First of all, his current wife, Marjorie Harvey, isn't exactly a stranger to controversy herself. Remember, before Steve, Marjorie was involved with not one, but two major figures who were deep into some shady business. Her first husband, Jim Townsend, was convicted and sent to prison for trying to move a large amount of illegal substances. He even admitted that the authorities had enough evidence to implicate Marjorie, but he made a deal to keep her from being charged. And as if that wasn't enough, after she split from Townsend, Marjorie went on to marry another big player in the same shady game, Donald Woods. So, Steve didn't just marry a woman with a complicated past, he married someone who had close ties to people living far from the straight and narrow. But Marjorie's past isn't the only thing raising eyebrows. Steve himself has been accused of mistreating those closest to him. Rumors have circulated for years about how he's treated employees and those who've worked for him. Stories have surfaced that paint him as a controlling, demanding boss who's quick to fire anyone who crosses him. According to some former staff members, Steve is known to keep a tight grip on those around him, ensuring that everything goes according to his plan or else. And let's not forget the infamous letter he wrote to his staff a few years back, where he basically told them not to approach him unless absolutely necessary. He claimed it was to ensure his privacy, but many people saw it as just another sign of his controlling nature.
There are some problems that the defense has brought up originally, but it seems like, just from reading this 14-page indictment, that there is enough physical evidence to perhaps get a conviction in this case.
Then there's the issue of Steve's personal relationships. Despite all the preaching he does about faithfulness and marriage, rumors have swirled for years that Steve hasn't always been loyal. There have been whispers about infidelity throughout his marriages, and though nothing has been confirmed, the rumors have been persistent. In fact, some insiders claim that part of the reason Steve has worked so hard to maintain a spotless public image is because he's terrified of the truth coming out. If his fans found out that the man who's built an empire on family values had skeletons in his closet, it could all come crashing down. So when Steve says he's been blackmailed by Diddy, it's hard not to wonder if it's the footage from those notorious parties that's making him so nervous. And let's not gloss over the nature of Diddy's parties themselves. These weren't just typical Hollywood gatherings. We're talking about events that were rumored to be as wild as they come. There's been speculation for years about what went on at these parties, and a list of attendees is enough to raise anyone's suspicions. From athletes to musicians to actors, Diddy's guest list was a who's who of the entertainment industry. But beyond the glitz and glamour, there have been reports of strange and questionable activities taking place at these gatherings. Several sources have hinted that Diddy had a way of pushing boundaries and indulging in behavior that most people would consider far from acceptable. And now, with the recent lawsuits and accusations piling up against him, it seems like the truth about what really went on at these parties is finally starting to surface.
That this is the end of the Diddy story as we know it.
The fact that Steve was a regular attendee at these events is enough to raise questions. What exactly did he see? What did he take part in? And more importantly, what did he take part in? And more importantly, what does Diddy have on him? Because let's be honest, if Steve is as desperate to keep these tapes under wraps as people say, then whatever was caught on camera must be pretty damning. And if it ever comes to light, it could not only ruin Steve's career, but also destroy the public's trust in him. That's why Steve is in such a delicate position right now. He's walking a tightrope trying to distance himself from Diddy while also protecting his own secrets.
Stand-up comedian, entertainer, television host, family man. But most importantly, I happen to be a man of faith.
Now, let's fast forward to the present. Diddy is in serious trouble. After months of rumors, lawsuits, and shocking allegations, Diddy was finally arrested on a slew of charges that range from racketeering to trafficking. The official charges paint a disturbing picture of a man who's been living a double life for years. From orchestrating illegal operations to coercing people into situations they couldn't escape from, Diddy's public persona as a suave, successful businessman is now in shambles. The details are still emerging, but the media frenzy surrounding his arrest is only growing.
All right, I got to take some time to address this here.
And if you think Diddy's legal team is going down without a fight, think again. His lawyers have been working overtime trying to paint him as the victim of an unjust witch hunt. They've issued statements saying that Diddy knew this day was coming and that he's ready to face the charges head on. His lawyer even referred to Diddy as a self-made entrepreneur and a loving family man, claiming that the charges against him are baseless and politically motivated. But despite the efforts to control the narrative, the evidence against Diddy seems overwhelming. One of the most explosive pieces of evidence is the surveillance footage that's recently come to light. It allegedly shows Diddy engaged in disturbing acts that line up with some of the allegations made by people close to him. And remember, this is just the beginning. As more footage and documents are unsealed, it's likely that even more shocking revelations will come out. The FBI is involved now, and they're not going to let this case go quietly. They've already raided several of Diddy's properties, seizing files, computers, and anything else that might help their case. So it's safe to say that Diddy's future is looking pretty bleak.
I've had clients describe NBC as hell, as the worst conditions they've been in.
In fact, things have gotten so bad that Diddy has been denied bail. The judge overseeing the case ruled that Diddy poses too much of a risk, both to the public and to potential witnesses in the case. There's even concern that if he were released, Diddy might try to tamper with evidence or intimidate those who could testify against him. So for now, Diddy is sitting in jail waiting for his day in court. And while his legal team is working around the clock to secure his release, it doesn't look like that's going to happen anytime soon.
And let me tell you something else. Not only should he have apologized to Cassie in that video, he should have apologized to all of the general public that he lied to.
Meanwhile, Steve is doing everything he can to distance himself from the chaos. But here's the thing, no matter how hard he tries to paint himself as a victim, the fact remains that Steve was part of Diddy's inner circle for years. He knew what was going on, and he chose to stay quiet. Whether it was because of the blackmail or because he was benefiting from the relationship, Steve was complicit. And now that Diddy's empire is crumbling, Steve is trying to save himself from the fallout.
Rumors are that Diddy was running some kind of Epstein-type deal where he was filming everybody, right?
That's the rumors, yeah. I don't know that there's any proof or anything other than that.
The question is, will the public buy it? Can Steve really claim he was just an innocent bystander, dragged into something he didn't want to be part of? Or is this just another example of someone who's used their power and influence to cover up their own misdeeds? It's hard to say. But one thing is for sure, the longer Steve stays quiet, the more suspicious he looks. And as more details about Diddy's parties and the people who attended them come out, the harder it's going to be for Steve to keep his reputation intact.
Why doesn't the government want him to turn himself in? Because then they can't ask for detention. So they go and they arrest him. They arrest a guy who came to New York to turn himself in.
In the end, Steve's fate might depend on what happens with Diddy. If Diddy goes down, there's a chance that he'll take others down with him. After all, Diddy has spent years building relationships with some of the most powerful people in the industry, and if he's facing a lengthy prison sentence, he might be willing to cooperate in exchange for a reduced sentence. And who's to say that Steve isn't one of the people Diddy might expose? It's not outside the realm of possibility that Diddy has more dirt on Steve than we even know about. So while Steve might be breathing a sigh of relief now that he's cooperating with the feds, he might not be out of the woods just yet.
This has to be a 100% culture shock. I can't imagine living a lifestyle of the incredibly rich and famous and then going into this very dark, impersonal, cold, austere facility.
For now, though, all eyes are on Diddy as he faces the biggest legal battle of his life. Whether he manages to weasel his way out of this one or finally faces justice remains to be seen. But one thing is clear, the story of Diddy and his empire is far from over. And as more pieces of the puzzle come to light, we'll likely see more names, more scandals, and more shocking revelations emerge. The question is, will Steve Harvey's name be one of them? As the dust settles, only time will tell how deep the rabbit hole goes. But one thing's for sure, both Steve and Diddy are playing dangerous games, and in Hollywood, no secret stays buried forever. So with everything we've uncovered, what do you think? Is Steve Harvey really the victim here, or has he been playing both sides all along? And how deep do you think Diddy's influence runs in Hollywood? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.